Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. I am so excited for this one. As you can see, I have a very special guest with me today. Mary's joining us, and we're going to be talking about digital crisis management, which is a very important topic because, of course, it's something we all don't want to deal with, but you never know what happens. You never know what could happen. So you should always be prepared, have some sort of plan in place. And so this is going to be really awesome. And I'm so excited. And as usual, I can see some people already know what I'm going to ask. Let us know where you're joining from. I love to see everyone and where they're calling in from. We have North Dakota, Boston, Myrtle Beach, Toronto, another Toronto, love it. Chicago, amazing. Halifax, I love it. I love to see it. Keep letting us know where you're joining from. Jesse, you win with joining from Malaysia, considering it is 2 a.m. there. So I love that. We love that dedication right there. She says it's worth it. It is. Awesome. Okay, so keep letting me know where you're joining from, and I'm going to go over a few housekeeping slides here. So just in case you came across this webinar somewhere and you're not quite sure what HeyOrca is. So HeyOrca is a social media scheduler for teams and agencies. So we're here to assist you with all of your social media scheduling. And my favorite part about it is you can have unlimited users. So your whole team can be on HeyOrca. You don't have to pay for extra users, which is great. And if you'd like to follow us on social, it's at HeyOrca on all the different social platforms. And I want to shout out Jessica, our social media manager, who's been killing it with all the video content. So if you want to take a look at all of that, definitely check it out. And we'll do a quick round of intros. So my name is Alyssa, and I'm a community strategist here at HeyOrca. So I work on our webinars, our newsletter, Facebook group, all that kind of stuff. And I'll pass it over to our special guest, Mary.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. HeyOrca, I'm a little nervous, but especially knowing that I have an international audience, and I'm glad that we're spending 2 a.m. together in Malaysia. That's exciting. So my name is Mary Kapusta. I'm the Director of Communications and Engagement at Calgary Public Library. We're one of the largest public library systems in North America. Over 58% of our citizens are active library users in Calgary, which is over 818,000 members, about 7 million visits a year. So if you're wondering if the library is still a busy place, it's busier than ever. So make sure you have your active library card. It's great for people with small businesses and learning about things. I'll also say I've worked in the not-for-profit cultural sector and working with artists for over 17 years. And I'm eager today to share, maybe be a little vulnerable. And I think today we're all about just getting through some slides and some information about what we experienced in Calgary. But the focus of today is really so we can hold time for questions. We can give some tips. If you're a not-for-profit educational institution out there, libraries, one of the coolest things about libraries is that we're open share. So if you see something and you're like, oh gosh, I wonder if I could, yes. So I'm happy to share that. We can share my email after this. You can find me on LinkedIn. But that's one of the greatest parts of working at libraries, that we just want information to share. So if you see something today that inspires you, make it better, kick it back. That's kind of how we operate at libraries. So with that, let's begin. I also want to give a shout out to Jesse from HeyOrca, who made this connection at the awesome Social Next conference, and excited to get into it. Let's go.
Yes, I just have to quickly tell everyone about our giveaway.
Oh, yes.
They're going to want to share what they've learned in this. I'm positive on LinkedIn. But I also, when you said Jesse for the connection, I do want to shout out Jesse because Jesse watched Mary's presentation at Social Next in Ottawa and immediately was like, you have to see this presentation. This was amazing, and was raving about it. And so immediately we were like, we got to get Mary on here because this is going to be so good. So yes, shout out Jesse in the chat right now. But before we dive into it, I do want to let you know we have a giveaway. And if you've come to our webinars before, you know the drill here. But we have a poll right now on our LinkedIn page. The question is, have you ever had to deal with a social media crisis? Go vote on our poll and you are automatically entered into our giveaway. And then the second way to win, because we have 2 ways you can win an Amazon gift card. The second way is just share what you learned in this webinar on LinkedIn. Tag us, tag Mary, and then you're in the giveaway and we'll be randomly selecting someone. So if there's a part of this webinar that really resonates with you or something you really want to remember, share it on LinkedIn, tag us, and you're automatically entered. So very easy. But yes, let's get into all the amazing content. I am so excited to hear about everything you are about to tell us. So I'll pass it over to you.
Okay, so we all know, like I've worked in kind of digital marketing and the idea of social media. I remember those Web 2.0 sessions a long time ago that all seem quite charmingly nostalgic right now. But more than trolls, the old wisdom was never feed a troll. Right? Like don't engage, don't feed trolls. But what if it's kind of more than a troll? And I think that's what we're going to be talking about today with some of the tactics and trends we're seeing. I think public service workers right now are at a high risk of online targeting and harassment campaigns. And so that's why I'm really passionate and really grateful to HeyOrca to kind of shine this light. All brands, all organizations, all agencies should understand what's happening. But if you work for a not-for-profit, government, or kind of any kind of social service agency, there's some really important information in here and some worrying trends we're seeing across North America. And in Canada, certainly, a hot political climate. And the US, you got stuff going on too. But right now, Canada, we got some stuff going on. So it's certainly timely. So let's go in. So traditional crisis response, I've spent my career in communications. If you're not familiar with this is a very standard. There are lots of versions, but there's always that period before the bad thing. That bad thing is that red section. Oh my gosh, a bad thing happened. You're going to have your initial response, the period of recovery, and then your return and kind of your risk management. When you think about managing a traditional crisis response, that's when you're looking for, we talk about 4 C's in communications. So you want your communications to be clear, confident, credible, and correct. So, but what they don't say is control. We're communicators. We want to be in control of everything. So as soon as something unexpected happens, immediately you are trying to take control of the situation and navigate through it and lead your organization and brand through it. We're going to talk about how that might not be as possible in a digital environment. So here's your case study. We're Calgary Public Library, 20,000 people a day visit our locations. Tens of thousands of programs have in our location for every ages, every interest. So this is your case study. There's a disruption in a location. Children are present. Small children are present. There are witnesses. There's a recording of the event. There's a harassment of a specific group, and there's legal risk. If you're in communications or if you're used to crisis response, you're immediately going to make your checklist in your head because you're going to see kind of what is going on. You're going to say, okay, this. But what I'm going to show you is what happened to us. And it was pretty rough 2 years ago. I'm also going to give a moment, as so often with really hard digital crisis response and some of the harassing techniques, they can disproportionately affect certain groups within our communities. So I just want to note that there is some language that I would find upsetting, and perhaps members of the Two-Spirit LGBTQIA plus community may also find triggering or upsetting. So I just want to give that moment and give that piece. And but we'll try and keep it brief. Here we go.
Here we go.
And in Canada, it's now a crime to object to sexualized drag shows for children. You're not allowed to say a word. Late last month, a pastor in Calgary was violently thrown out of an all-ages, in other words, for children, drag queen story hour for daring to object to the sexualization of children. Watch this.
We are now calling the police.
All right, let me get this back up here.
I know. So I know what you're thinking. in a long and storied career, I finally made Fox News, and it was thrilling. It's hard when the host of a big show like Tucker Carlson calls on Christian warriors to descend upon you. But there's a little bit more that Tucker is leaving out of his broadcast here. So this is actually what happened. I'm going to try and get through it because it's still it feels very fresh because all those emotions, you can see how this became quite a upsetting event for many, many people. And actually kicked off about 4 months of protest, counter demonstrations, and a lot of harassment and targeting of our employees. So this is what happened. So several adults walked into a program room that was hosting a Reading with Royalty program. Some people, similar programs can exist under names like Drag Storytime. We work with our royal readers. So that is an event for families with small children. It's a dress-up program. A man wearing a black tactical-like vest disrupted the program with 2 other people who started shouting and filming. They were shouting upsetting language. Some may consider that hateful language. Staff and parents had no idea what was going on. Our librarian in the room actually gathered the children in the corner. It's so upsetting. Police were called, and the individuals were banned. Now, police investigation proved that it was organized, targeted, and it was intent to intimidate and disrupt the program presenters, a lovely drag king, King Neptune. Police filed charges and determined it was a hate-motivated crime. What was one event? What changed that is a recording. That recording you saw was then taken and provided to news outlets who then claimed that person as a citizen journalist, a new term for me. That was then if you work in media, it's very hard to get media claimed content pulled. That then was then taken as part of demonstrations, protests, and online targeting and harassment of Calgary Public Library and our partners at Calgary Pride. Staff members were named, photos were shared. It never ended. So I couldn't get that footage that had those children pulled out. What you're seeing in that video, I believe, is a grandfather who's there with his toddler granddaughter. So even sharing this, I get tense, and Alyssa was on, and I was nervous because, as Jesse remembers when I've shared the story before, even me sharing it, you Googling and clicking could all ignite this again. And we'll talk about how that happens.
I just want to grab some things from the chat, and everyone in the chat and the community says thank you for sharing this with us, and everyone is sending hugs and agrees that this is just such an awful situation. So yeah, I just want to let you know that everyone is with you. Well,
I got it. Don't worry. So that's the crapper. And that's what we're going to do, is to show that emotion and to show the partner. Here's the thing. That was one experience for me. But if you work with partners, especially in underrepresented and equity-seeking groups, they feel this in ways I can't appreciate and understand. And so we're going to talk about how to better support them as well with this work. Remember your traditional crisis? Remember I talked about control? Remember how we talk about how it ends and you're working your way, you're getting through recovery? In a digital crisis scenario, what I'm proposing is that does not happen, because the algorithm, just like the algorithm, you all know how to work it. People like HeyOrca can really stretch your dollar and stretch your work there. So can people who are working against you. That video then was shared. That video was shared in some maybe Facebook groups that would be considered extreme or far right. It was repopulated. That then created more opportunities for other protesters to come to our locations, to create interactions and disruptions, to generate more video that could then be spurned, that could then be added to new groups, new posts. At that time, then earned media, traditional media would come and they would capture, because guess what? They're chasing those likes and engagement too. Once again, I would encourage you not to go looking for this, because even if you go and give me a supportive comment on one of those original posts, you could reignite that algorithm, and all of a sudden that could flare up again. In a digital crisis scenario, you're going to have your first response cycle, right? But then guess what? Anything could kick it off. A story on a traditional media, a different post being reshared, being tagged. And then once you're in that cycle, it feeds itself and it goes and it goes and it goes. There is no control. What you have to do to move to that period of recovery is going to be against some of your instincts, which is really going to be keeping your head down, turning your platforms down. Because when you think about when you're comparing that traditional comms to a digital crisis response, look at how they stack up against each other. You're not moving to recovery. Even today, anything could kick that off again. And we're back in that cycle, waiting it out again. So when you think about that digital, all of a sudden, I have people reporting the news that maybe aren't following the same standards as a traditional outlet. I have no control on images. Images of small children are being taken without permission. Parents were being harassed as they exited libraries. We're talking 4.5 months that just wouldn't stop. And so then when you think about that digital environment, then you start getting into the memes, and we'll talk about some of the new tactics we're seeing in harassment as well. This is the other component that it's sensitive, but people will also act on your behalf, oftentimes with good intentions. People want to defend you. They want to defend maybe the issue at stake or other things in the news cycle is feeding their view of it. But they're also contributing to it not going away. So what do you do? What do you do if the platform itself is the crisis? And this is a scary thought because, especially as someone who has a limited budget, especially as someone who's trying to work in crowded spaces, digital gives you so many things. It allows you to tell stories. It allows underrepresented voices. It allows so much for you. But what if the platform itself is the crisis? Everything is hot. The floor is lava. Every channel we had was too hot. So you kind of have to turn it down, right? You kind of have to wait it out. So when we think about, before we get to some of this, what we did in that instance was we had to work with our partners. We also had to understand when people had to do their own thing. And you have to give permission for everyone to kind of share what they're doing, but also know everyone ultimately has to, when it's on you and it feels like it's not ending, everyone has to take steps to protect their own brand. And for instance, the level of advocacy that a public library can take part in might be different than, for instance, people within that community. And so it's important to give that space, be very empathetic and understanding. For us, what helped was we were able to, in our city, they changed a bylaw of harassment in public spaces. We had to do some media training with our staff about what to do when you're filmed without your permission. If you ever want to talk about that offline, let me know. We gave up some great role-playing, great guidelines to prevent unwanted filming and identification of staff. But ultimately, we turn stuff way down. And certain platforms, but it also pushed us to try new things in different areas. So a year ago, we saw something different. So we went through that horrible experience. We came through it with our partners. We learned a lot. We changed how we were doing things. And then, we're seeing a whole range of this type of behavior. So here are a couple things, trends and tools of those bad actors. So AI bots is one. AI content generators. This is something we had experience with last year that led us to actually even go further in our response and preparation. Conditional posting rules. What if someone is using all the tricks you have to hurt you, to hurt your brand? So AI content generators, the AI bots. We suffered an AI bot attack last year that was shocking. It went so extreme so quickly. Coded hate. We had to recently update our social media guidelines to include emojis. We all know eggplant, and that's kind of fun. A little, oh gosh, a little tacky. Did you know that clowns can be used? Did you know that sometimes they can be used to single out certain groups, two-spirit LGBT groups, for example? Certain combinations of emojis could represent something that could be racist or hateful. So understanding emojis and how they're being used and having that awareness. We talked about citizen journalists. Another component that I want to raise awareness on is pink slime journalism. This came out a couple of years ago, but it's something that you see more on Facebook. It's not as prevalent, but it can still pop up. And certainly in election cycles, it's when it really comes up, or hot issues. Some journalism is when you're creating kind of fake regional papers would be a tactic to give representation that you're sharing from a verified, credible, traditional news source, but it in fact is not. It is kind of a dummy website. There's lots of reading on that. Columbia Journalism Review has some great definitions of when that first started coming out, actually through U.S. elections. They have some great examples. Unpredictable platforms. I thought, X, Meta, what's going on? Things that we used to use. We, for instance, in our market had to sunset our TikTok account that was incredibly popular because things changed with how our government was working with it. Misinformation, misdirects. People often would think they are getting correct information about our programs or about our services. We had people showing up to protests who thought they were there about vaccines. And we were there saying, well, actually, it's a program for small children. And also just in general in a digital landscape, who's yelling at me? We did some great analysis and reporting after the fact to realize that some of the targeting we were receiving during the kind of drag story time storm we were in was coming from outside of our region. And Alberta, if you're not familiar with it, it can be viewed as a bit more of a conservative province in Canada. But we were seeing a lot of kind of actors from Ontario, the United States. We can also see that in other international sources.
I do want to pull out a comment and then a question that is in the chat. So we have a comment that says, the emoji coding is so interesting. I just finished watching Adolescence, and this was a tool used for bullying. All the kids knew certain emojis that seemed harmless meant actually something very malicious, which it's crazy that we have to learn now, what these emojis mean, all the different meanings, like you said, if things are paired together or all this kind of thing. So it's crazy that that's something we have to now look into and learn about.
Yeah, and we'll talk when we get to our incident response model. I'm out of the game, right? But I'm often the person making decisions or in kind of approving a course of action. But if I'm not aware of that risk, so really making sure your training and your awareness at all levels in your digital team is up there. But yes, the emoji thing was a new learning, and we had to change our policies to include it.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the one question we have here is, would you say pink slime journalism has kind of moved more to individuals / opinions with Meta getting rid of their news in Canada?
I do personally think you've seen that shift. I think I'm also curious. People keep talking about like the return of the blog and the return of like microblogging in different ways. I always put the caveat on the pink slime, like that was a couple years ago, but in Canada, I'm not seeing that the same. Mm-hmm. But something that is a really important thing for people to consider is the importance and influence of group chats for people receiving information. So yes, there's Facebook, but Facebook groups, images, flat images in Facebook groups being shared that are misrepresenting information, like that is pretty gnarly. You're also going to be looking at like WhatsApp chats, Instagram, any kind of group chat where people are sharing links. You're seeing some of that behavior move there, in my opinion, and also the level of influence on just in general, like DM and chat for sharing misinformation is pretty concerning.
Yeah. Thank you.
So this is scary stuff, right? So what do you do? And once again, all these slides are available. I hope HeyOrca can share everything we're creating here. So don't worry. And once again, you can hit me up after. So what if it's all happening to you? You're focusing on your targeted messages. You're driving alignment. Something I would flag, if you do not have a support protocol for your digital team, what are you doing? You have to get on it. If someone comes into our location and an upsetting thing happens, we have an incredible incident response platform. We have procedures. We have decompression tactics. We do things like if someone comes in and yells at you or a disruption happens that is upsetting, we're on it. That happens in our digital world all the time. We have an amazing digital team. Caitlin, and Aaron are in our team are working on this sort of stuff. Oftentimes when you think about that person in some of those social monitoring roles, they might be more junior, they might be developing their career. They don't need to be seeing the kind of stuff that our staff are exposed to without those supports. So please think about that. Third party monitoring is a critical thing. And if you are a small agency, freelancer, medium agency, I hear a lot of the time, especially not-for-profits, well, we don't have that team, we don't have that budget. I'm putting on the industry. You should start shopping these around. If we have within our incident response, if it ticks to that, oh my gosh, this is upsetting, you enact that third-party monitoring, because everyone needs to step away and not be exposed to some of the hateful messages that are coming to us. So that would be a great tip or an option for someone highly scalable, and businesses, especially in public sector, we really need that kind of scalable support. So something for you to consider. Understand when people have to do their own thing, and understand where they might have to condemn your actions, because our approach of like a lower action or turning things down, people often wanted us to be stronger, but we were trying, it was just inflaming and inflaming. And then that kind of digital world can lead to real world safety implications. And so understanding, like, we were working with police, there were investigations on multiple fronts, and that's not all being shown. So just understanding when you have to make those tough calls. Make media act responsibly. I did tell a major media outlet when they wanted to send a camera for the 6th time to a place where small children were to cover the story again. I called them out and I said, listen, the story's been told. Your cameras are scaring small children. Mm-hmm. And so we had to change photography, filming guidelines. No one needs to be filming a space where little children are. And that goes for all of our children's programs. And yeah, ride it out. It doesn't sound like the hero statement, but you got to ride it out and change your content up. So once again, for your community manager, are they empowered to take action quickly? Are you ready to flag and escalate issues appropriately? Are you able to recognize the warning signs of strain and burnout? What's the first thing social media people see? Because you see everything, right? You're like, oh, this guy's crazy. Oh, this guy's a jerk. Like, oh, whatever. Like, it's not a real person. Each one scratches your heart. Each one impacts your resilience. So knowing everyone feels that they can handle it until they can't. So tagging out, rotating it, reducing that strain, advocate for your social team, advocate for those roles. Something we came up when we experienced a bot attack last year, which was our first one. We went to about, it was kind of a gross comment on a post promoting a program for a historian who was, in their words, was documenting queer history in Alberta. In about 24 hours, we got to about 2,000 comments. Peak posting happened between 2 and 4 a.m. Emojis and very upsetting memes, meme generators showing visuals of harm and murder to people within a specific group. That's how bad it is. And if that happens, I'm here to share, I was unprepared. I was unprepared to know what that looked like. I was working off an old incident response model. I thought my guidelines covered me because we had gone through all this stuff with our drag story time, but AI changed it. And we lost control so quickly. And it was so upsetting that this is something we created, because I made a vow to the partner we were working with, who was this amazing historian who's done so much for their community. I said, I'm gonna figure this out. And part of doing this presentation and other presentations is really trying to push to understand how we can better support our social people, but also when we're working with partners and we're entrusted with stories, how are we supporting and creating safer spaces as much as we can in a digital world for them? So what I would propose to you is creating some sort of incident response. When we have crisis response in physical locations, we know what to do. We are operationally prepared. Are you ready to identify and escalate and take action at certain levels? When we started getting some weird tagging posts, my social person, she's like, this is going to blow up. This is going to get bad. And I'm like, well, they haven't said anything that qualifies as hate language right now. I think we'll do a reminder. Like, we were just being tentative and being like, kind of, once again, that head down, right? Just hang on. That doesn't work in that kind of content generator, this conditional posting. It didn't work and we were inundated. Eventually, the post had to be deleted at the request of the artist because it was overwhelming and there was a fear of safety. And certainly I supported that. If you look at this, are you preparing that person, even at a more junior role, to take action immediately when they're like, no? Do your guidelines support that? Will you stand behind them? So I would encourage you to consider making some sort of escalation. Happy to provide more information on this offline. Here's an example of how we changed our social guidelines. We're a library, intellectual freedom. It's very important. But we had to work to pilot, and then these became official. So we piloted them last fall, and these were our new terms as of this year. You can see some things: spamming, self-promotion, sharing personal information about yourself or another person. There's reasons. These are all very carefully worded because of the type of behavior we were seeing. So here's some steps you can take today. Once again, this presentation is available to you. Happy to share more, happy to connect you with members of our team as well. I would think about, how are you ready to handle targeting? What would you do for a bot attack? Create that awareness with your leadership team. Do you all understand what this could look like for your brand? And agencies, once again, do you have scalable options for people that have tiny budgets, that if this happens, they can call you and give them the space to step away and get that support? So I just wanted to say thank you so much. I know that's a lot of information to run through. It probably took 3 minutes, with just emotional, but eager to hear questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mary. This was amazing. Like, I feel like I'm gonna have to rewatch this again. It was so good. And we do have some questions here that I'm gonna pull out from the chat. But one I want to say, it's more of a comment, but it's from Natalie, and she says, just a comment to say, you're such an empathetic leader, Mary. Your team is lucky to have you, which I totally agree with. And yeah, this has been an amazing presentation. So I just wanted to pull out that comment before we get into any of the questions. And actually, one question that we have here is, do you have any examples or resources of third-party monitoring?
Oh, yeah. So for us, we work with our PR agency. So we treat it like you're a true crisis response. So when that happens, when it hits, so for instance, we have business hours, right? When does some of this stuff go wild? It can be different hours. And also, if you're seeing upsetting content and you're supporting your staff, understanding when that switches. So I send an email to our agency and I say, we're enacting third-party monitoring. Here's the situation that we're experiencing. Please turn on. And they know, because they know how to work with us. And we work with Brooklyn PR right now, and based in Calgary, great agency. They switch. We've also had that with our previous agencies as well. And I would encourage you that that's something that's very scalable, because there are maybe different systems, but it's more about you seeing, and then we would be asking for daily reports, or when we were really in it, we'd be getting reports 2 or 3 times a day. And the know that they could call my cell phone if something went to the next level.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, working with a PR agency would be super helpful in situations like this. Awesome. And I have another question here. So the question is, what is your advice in engaging on other accounts targeting your business/individuals online? In Regina, Saskatchewan, we have a meme page called Just Bins that frequently posts misinformation, hateful content, and active crime scenes, and they have thousands of followers rallying behind them. Should you engage or only worry about controlling the narrative on your own platforms?
So I personally, and once again, like, you have great digital experts probably in this room, but just as like a humble public servant, I would not. I can only control information that I have access to, and I can only provide correct information. So I would not be directing my team to go into different areas to provide corrections. We have done that in very limited instances, like for instance on Reddit, or when community pages have cited something incorrect about the library. But I'm here to, it doesn't often work out. Yeah. What you need to do then is, what I would be saying is, like, if you're seeing something inaccurate happening on a different platform, where's your content schedule? What are you pushing out on a balanced platform in response, or in a, maybe like, if you're like, Facebook right now is a pretty tough one, right? So are you trying different platforms to get correct information out? You have a risk of over responding, because that yelling feels so intense. But those 10 posts could be by one person, and that one person could be a robot. So I would just, keep it in kind of relative. I think LinkedIn, with some of their more secure and their kind of posting conditions, we have moved a lot on there. Nice. Using stuff like Reels, stories. In some ways, this work really pushed it to do more and more video. We certainly use X now as a one-way, very passive. Facebook is still hot. Like, it all depends on the topic. And here's the other part. You're also at a risk of not telling the stories of underrepresented voices already because you're afraid. So you know what you should do on that? Where's your partner advertising? Where's your put some real ads behind it, put some digital work, put something else, put some content generation around that. Because that's the other thing, is you get scared, but then you're also you're holding up that unconscious bias. And so something to think about balancing. But yeah, I'd avoid working in someone else's world.
Yeah, I love that advice. Another question we have here is, did you have to take any legal action against anyone defaming the library or its staff?
No. Actually, I would say if you have the ability, we work very closely with the hate crimes unit in Calgary. And what has been really supportive through the last couple of years when we've had some of these challenges on different types of groups, and sometimes they will flag things for us. They're like, hey, we're seeing this thing. And we're like, oh my gosh, thank you. And it's their responsibility to interpret if a bylaw or if another crime has been committed. For us, when we have seen some targeting, I won't speak to it, and I won't give the name of the person who led some of the work against us, but there were charges and he was convicted. And so I think those things are important to remember. But for instance, in pursuing private matters, no, but working with police, working with online appropriate agencies, for sure.
Yeah, totally. And another question here is, do you have any suggestions on how to manage all of this as a one-person team? I am the entire marketing and communications department for a national nonprofit. It's just a matter of time before we have a digital crisis, and I don't feel equipped to handle it.
First of all, I feel you. And like, I work with a lot of and support a lot of regional or smaller charities who are like, okay, so my social team is me on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. And so what I would say to you is, like, look at some of the slides in here and understand, do your guidelines support you taking action? Do you have to be on as many platforms as you're on? Thinking about your content scheduling and how you can balance. And I know that's hard with one person because everyone's like, engagement, it can't all be scheduled. Well, let's talk about realities of being like a small resource team or like a no team. I think it's more about that level of prevention and being empowered to take action so something can be nipped in the bud before it progresses. That would be kind of my instinct. I would also say, if your organization, maybe they don't have marketing dollars, but what is your HR team's approach on crisis response? If you have like lobbying your leadership and saying, like, can we have, like, this could happen to us? Can we have emergency money? Could we have $2,500 in the event something like this happens where I can get advice in that moment? Is there a source of funding we can pull from? Might be something to help you feel more supported, especially if you are the person and you have to take a step back.
Yeah. Totally. I love the advice of looking at, like, okay, do you really need to be on every single social platform, or is there like maybe two that you're, get a lot of engagement on? Just focus on those. And that can really help as well. So yeah, I love that advice. And just a comment from the chat from Jeff. They say, Mary, I was at your presentation at Social West. I learned so much from you. And these presentations that you share, it means a lot. And it's helped me with my social media monitoring. So thank you, Jeff.
Thanks.
That's amazing. But yeah, that's kind of all the questions that we have here right now. But I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your experience with us and being so vulnerable. And this was amazing. And I think we've learned so much. And I'm going to send you some screenshots of the chat after this, because people, they were loving it. And so thank you, everyone, for all of your amazing, kind words in the chat. I'm definitely going to get Mary a copy of that so she can see it all. But thank you so much for joining us. This was so good. And hopefully maybe in the future we can collaborate again, because this was amazing. And everyone has loved it in the chat. So thank you so much. And just for everyone watching, I can link the slides in the recording email that will go out. So if you want to check out anything, again, we'll put it there so that you can have access to it. But yes, this was amazing. Jesse just put your LinkedIn in the chat there. So
Yeah.
if anyone wants to connect with Mary, her LinkedIn is there in the chat. And yeah, thank you so much. This was amazing. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
And a parting word,
yes.
Please support your local library. There's sometimes some jerks are trying to come for us. So the best way to support your library and support intellectual freedom and safer spaces for everyone is to get a library card. It's really that simple. So follow your local library, support your local library. And thank you so much for the opportunity. HeyOrca.
I love that. Yes, everyone go visit their local library. It's amazing. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Bye.